Hello?
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy. How's
What's
shit?
going on, dudes?
Not much. Justin, this is Will. Will, this is Justin.
I will. Nice to meet
How's
you.
it going, man?
He plays for Robin's other band, HYDERA.
Oh, sick, man. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Good to be here.
he's fucking sick.
I can already tell he's got the shirt on. He's ready to go. He's like, let's go, man.
Uh,
Is that for
I
the
got this straight from the. This is the 70,000 tons of metal exclusive
nice.
shirt.
Dude, this guy was at, what show was it where I saw this guy wearing a Persuader When Eden Burns shirt?
I'm pretty sure that
what
was
was that?
Kalma.
Yes, comma. Yeah. I was like, holy fuck. I like never expected to see a Persuader shirt ever.
That's generally everyone's reaction who like recognizes the shirt and understands the logo and everything.
Yeah.
Most people are like, whatever. But then the ones who do know them, they're like, my God, dude, I didn't think anyone else knew this band.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Anyways, so new Unleash the Archers album. What do you guys think?
I was pleasantly surprised, but also it wasn't exactly what I was expecting, which,
Okay.
on a first listen, I was basically expecting Apex 2, but
Right.
after like watching some interviews and stuff, I learned that isn't at all what they were going for. And even after like a first listen through the album, it was pretty clear, but like I would still consider every track on that album a straight 10 out of 10 banger. That's a no skip album for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I agree with that, man. I've been anticipating this album moment after Apex finished. I was like, oof, like I am ready for what's to come next. They had told us it was a concept album, and we had our first taste of their idea of a concept album with Demons of the Astrowaves. But as soon as Apex came out, it was like a complete breath of fresh air. They had a good sound. They had good direction. Like everything was focused. So going into Abyss, I had a lot of expectations, and I feel like they hit a lot of them. I knew the instrumentation was going to be an interesting thing to kind of delve into, especially with it being super synthy and electronic. And I was like definitely like, okay, I'm excited to like hear what's about to go down, and it's definitely a no skip. I've been listening to it since it came out, and everything's so focused, like it's right where everything used to be, not a single note out of place.
Yeah. So before I give my opinion, I want to just sort of like backtrack to like how like where I like how I was introduced to this band. Like the first album of theirs that I heard was what's it called? Time Stand Still. And I kind of felt like the musicianship was like A plus plus plus, but the songwriting was like high C, low B. I don't know, I just didn't feel like the vocal melodies were there, and it wasn't just like super memorable. And I kind of felt like if this band can just like bring that one element together, they will be like one of the greatest bands on the planet. And I thought Apex was like a colossal Godzilla-sized step in the right direction in that regard. And then this current album, basically I love this album so much that I want to fuck it. Yeah, I would also agree that every song on this album is like 9.5 or 10 out of 10. I think like both of you guys have alluded to, it's a lot, I don't want to say lighter, but it's kind of, it's less straightforward than their previous albums. And I'm actually surprised more people don't complain about that, because I don't know if either of you guys are into Battle Beast at all, but they're more...
A little bit.
Say it again?
A little bit.
Yeah, they got just torn apart for being somewhat lighter on the most recent album they did. And I feel like that album is way heavier than this one.
I think
But
part of what might alleviate some of that is that it's a more like cinematic album when you compare it to it, but it like everything bleeds so well into the next track, and there's always like context to the songs, and they're not some of them may be like lighter, but there's still a pretty decent element of heavy and emotion in each one, I guess.
And I'm definitely 100% not complaining about that, because like something that I've always kind of wanted to see is more metal bands kind of expanding the sound and you know, experimenting a little bit more, and that's definitely what they've done on this album. And I also kind of feel like if you look at the direction that power metal in general is going, I feel like electronic and sort of more super modern production and somewhat of a poppier approach to things is kind of the direction that the genre is going in a little bit.
Yeah, I think I hear you on that. The two, I guess, on this album that like really bring that forward in just the right ways are like Through Stars and Carry the Flame. Like the first time I'm like hearing the intros of those, I could have sworn it was like maybe a cover of a Phil Collins song or something like that. And when it actually gets in you, like it all comes together.
Well, I don't know. I feel like Carry the Flame has kind of like a late 80s, early 90s Ozzy kind of feel to it. I don't know. That's just kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah, same thing with even Through Stars, super vamped from like the 80s sound with the way the guitars were written out and the pacing of the song. It was very interesting to me that I do agree with you. Like it seems like we are going towards that that more pop sound. But I don't know. I suppose I wasn't too surprised, since that seems to be the way things are going nowadays. However, the way that they worked it to get into each song, I felt worked as a whole in general. I was doing some digging. They even, speaking of pop songs, they had actually done an extra song on a Japanese track. It's for Sunglasses at Night. Just total pop. You know what I mean? I was just like, what the heck? Like,
interesting.
Yeah. Oh, but my God, you got to give it a shot, man. You got to listen to it. It's really well done.
Wait, so was an original done for this album? Or so it was like an original track that they recorded specifically for this album, or was it like a cover of a pop song?
It was a cover of a pop song.
Oh, okay. It's
actually interesting because Arsis had done the exact same cover. So it's kind of interesting because when I, complete like two different shades, so it was really cool kind of like listening to the original and then going to the Arsis and then seeing Unleash the Archer's take on it, because I felt they stuck true to that, to the spirit of like that song in its particular time period. But I guess the giving it that like that metal fire that we're all
I love it when two different bands cover the same song. Like, did you ever listen to that Mago de Oz album that I gave you on the thumb drive?
Yeah.
That one song, I think they call it, I'm going to totally butcher this Spanish pronunciation, but I think they call it Mañana Empieza Hoy.
Oh.
That is actually an 80s pop song that is also covered by Ed Guy.
What?
And again, it's really, really interesting hearing like two different bands from two completely different continents do like metal covers of this random like 80s pop song.
I know. Dang. I'm going to have to go listen to Ed Guy now.
Yeah, everyone should listen.
What album from Ed
Guy? I don't know that it was on an album, but the YouTube video that I'm familiar with has the Vainglory Opera album art, so I assume it was from that area, and his voice kind of sounds a little on the like less polished side, so that would make sense for that era of his voice.
That's cool. Okay.
But yeah, going back to Unleash the Archers, I think that they do have like they do get sort of into the more synthy and electronic sound, but at the same time, if you compare it to like say Beast in Black, where it's like so ridiculous and over the top. It is basically just uh, like you know, really silly like 90s techno pop with metal guitars. Like, I feel like Unleash the Archers on this album have managed to take that basic sound and make it really smart and expressive and almost like proggy in kind of a way.
Yeah, even Sabaton can be like a little bit heavy-handed with the with the synths, but like they're kind of in your face a lot more. Like, here we have a synth in the song, listen to it.
Yeah. I think like the best description that I heard of this album was that it is like Devin Townsend project meets Stradivarius.
Mm.
And I think that kind of nails it. Whereas
like, so yeah, some of the songwriting definitely like just reeks of Townsend.
Yeah, and then alternately like that one song, I'm not 100% on the song titles at the moment, but I think it was called like Faster Than Light. Yep. That literally feels like an homage to Stradivarius.
I agree. I think that for me, the thing that hit me so well with it was just the direction that the music was going through. I've been looking at tons of interviews and just watching like reviews and stuff like that, trying to get ready for this thing. But I remember Britney Slays had done an interview about how they had how they kind of like structured the album, and in terms of like the writing, where there's like the soul writer, which was her, and she had an idea and she had a concept, and every other player just kind of went off that and worked together to kind of give it that that momentum. That was what struck a chord with me, was that how it was like they had a goal in mind, and everyone kind of worked towards getting that polished sound and going back to the lab and just and putting it back,
So does she do do most of the like I mean, it sounds like it's a very collaborative process, but like does she kind of like, is she kind of like the core songwriter of the band?
For this particular one, because I believe so, only because obviously Abyss is the second to Apex, which is this like concept, so she did have like she basically went to the writers being like, hey, like this is our plan, this is where I'm taking the characters, and it was the job of the musicians to kind of bring that to life, and I felt like the way each song kind of like folds into each other, it is how do I put this? The way they fold into each other is something that has direction, and it is, I don't know, it's awesome. I can't get past that,
It's kind of interesting how they made that work, because I was reading an interview with her like a couple days ago where she said the main theme riff in Abyss was basically one that I think Andrew had come up with like right around the time they were writing Apex, and they just threw it in the riff bank to be used at a later time. And when I do stuff like that, my songs end up sounding totally out of place with each other. Really? Like you obviously plugged this riff in from a place that it didn't belong, but this
interesting
exact opposite happened.
So yeah. for you, like the process of songwriting is like it has to come from the same sort of like creative burst.
Generally, that's when I think my best work comes out, but there have been times when I've recycled riffs, and those tend to be the ones that we like play for a little while, and we're like, I don't feel right about this song, so that in the graveyard it goes.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. So I'm assuming you guys noticed because Justin, you were talking about like, how each song, blends into the other. You guys noticed the connection between the opening track and the last track, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a really brilliant example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I thought it was sick. Didn't they? They had the dude, the orchestrator from Flesh God. They had him work on that last track.
No way. That's the guy from Flesh God? Very
Yeah.
interesting.
I got some mad majestic vibes coming from that very last iteration of it.
That's kind of mind-blowing, actually.
Yeah, really awesome to see people from the metal community kind of just like reaching out to each other, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So favorite songs on the album?
Legacy. I don't need to say anything else. Legacy.
Which ones?
Yeah, I thought it was.
Oh yeah.
Legacy was beautiful. There was a band around that that kind of did this, kind of followed around the same idea. But something about Unleash the Archers was so unique, from the vocal melodies to even just the intro. You know, you're not really sure like the direction you're going to, then boom, like black metal blast beats kind of thing going on, and you're just like, what the hell? I thought that it was probably the most unique sounding song. It was
definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it wasn't as you know, as a giant as Wind That Shapes the Land or Afterlife, which are like kind of like their, you know, obviously their longest songs. But I think it was definitely the most colorful to me. And I think that's gonna be like the one song that I think I remember from this album. And it's gonna be the one that I'm gonna be constantly like replaying. It's the first song I like go to when I listen to that album.
Favorite songs? Talking to you, Will.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't see where I'm looking.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm having some fun internet stuff right now, but can I just say the entire album is one big long song and call it that?
If that's your answer, then that's your answer.
Yeah.
But a like a more specific answer, I guess, would be I really loved Soulbound. I was one of the very few people who got to see them debut that song to a live audience, and so I heard it one time when they played it live, and it was like stuck in my head for like the good several months between when it actually had the studio debut.
So did you see them when they played LA back in like March? Oh, sorry to interrupt. But sorry, continue.
Oh yeah, I did. So I did see them at the LA show, and then me and a buddy drove to Fresno to see their little one-off headliner show that they played at some small bar there.
And coronavirus.
Knowing now that was the last show I would see before it was entirely worth the journey, even before I knew that was going to be the case, but that just made it that much more so. So anyway, yeah, that song stayed in my head and for like ever, and I like I can't remember the last time I heard a song only live and I retained it that well. Like I was like singing it to myself in my head and stuff as I'm like going to work and doing all my daily activities and stuff, and most of the time it just doesn't hit me like that. And my number 2 is probably Afterlife, just because it brings back the main theme, but then it also has some cool throwbacks to some of their older material where that's got kind of the heavier metalcore kind of sound to it, and they're trading off between Brittany and Grant with the call and response stuffers.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually really remarkable that you were able to retain anything from a live setting, because I can never retain shit that I am introduced to live. I think like the only time I've ever retained a song that I'd only heard live was when I saw Dragon Force back in like 2007, and they played Valley of the Damned, and I hadn't heard it yet. But yeah, other than that, I don't fucking retain shit.
When Valley of the Damned was new, wow.
No. Valley of the Damned was wait. Maybe it was later than that. No. Valley of the Damned was not new, but I had just never heard it yet.
New to you.
So my favorite songs, I'm going to go with Faster Than Light, because I always love some good old school sounding power metal, and that song is definitely that. I also really liked Carry the Flame, actually.
Oh, definitely.
I think that's going to be my number 2. If I had to come up with a number 3, I would probably go with Afterlife. Although like you were saying, I want to like have the entire rest of the album tied for number 3, because like really it's just pick whatever at random.
Let's see. I didn't get a 2 or 3. Let me figure this one out. Legacy was number 1.
That was number 1.
Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and say. I mean, obviously, Abyss was an amazing track.
Oh yeah.
I loved the lyrical content in Carry the Flame. I mean, just
me too.
I spent a lot of time just mulling over the lyrics and just kind of pinpoint where the story was at. I could understand like the motivation for each song, and kind of understand, because you're right. Like I feel like with each track, obviously, I want to see how well the music represents the lyrics. I want to catch each emotion that's being portrayed, especially with each title of the song, is suggesting a different chapter in the story. Soulbound was interesting. I thought it was cool, the way that they used the guitars almost to kind of like I guess personify who they were, the characters in the story, as well as in Faster Than Light. Exactly right. The way they come in with those crazy fast, the crazy fast shred, totally hits the head on the mark. You feel like you are racing across the planets. I actually was very happy with the way the music video had come out. I don't know if you had watched it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh man, they always have this awesome way of not making fun, but making fun almost of the music. It revolves around a track race.
Yeah, I've seen those screenshots of it.
Oh my gosh.
I just kind of assumed that was like the most that they could pull off in quarantine, but then I remember like they live in Canada, and I don't even know if Canada is quarantined at the moment.
Yeah.
They were saying the Soulbound music video, they had to do some like logistics around the quarantine for that. Otherwise, they would have had like a lot more extras in the background, and like the camera guy like took Grant's place for like one of the shots, so he wouldn't have to like be in quarantine away from his family when he came back.
Oh man.
I mean, that was also a lot longer. That was a while ago. I think like the Faster Than Light video just came out, so they were like from what I've heard from talking to people in Canada, it sounds like they're even having shows again. Like,
oh yeah,
like you're only allowed to have 50 people in attendance, so like obviously that kind of sucks. But
yeah, local bands are fine though.
So kudos to them for coming out with quality content even during this time.
Indeed. So any other stray thoughts?
Actually, I wanted to know what you guys thought as a secondary to Apex, because when Apex came out, it was so strong. It was such a strong release for the band. It was, I guess it seems like this group seems to continually improve.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Into the Astro Waste, first concept, first try. still technically, still like a lot of technical prowess going on in there. Britney's killing it with her vocals. Then we come in, we come into Time Stand Still, and I feel like that's kind of when they kind of like they found their sound. They found what they were going for, but there was still, like you said, songwriting wise, it seemed like it was still a bit staggered. But with Apex, it was like everything was focused. And now we get into Abyss, which is the second chapter of the story. And, I've been mulling over kind of just like, in comparison to Apex, what do you think it trumps it? Do you think it stands along the lines of it, stands toe to toe, or do you think it stands beneath it?
Personally, I think this album is much better because
I think.
Oh, go on. What are you gonna say? Did we lose
no, you can go for it.
Oh,
I was gonna say that it stands perfectly to the side completely because it occupies I think a very different set of emotions and feelings from this album than Apex would. Like I mentioned earlier, Apex just like there's a story behind it, but you can appreciate it as like an album with just a ton of banging tracks, whereas this one, it's like cinematic enough to it hooks you in with the music, but then you feel kind of how the story arcs, and it's almost like there's like three like distinct acts in the album, and like each set of songs kind of covers each piece of how that story evolves. But like, to be honest, I like didn't really look that far into the story behind Apex until like a couple of weeks ago. Because this one drove me so far into the story that I'm like, oh, this is like what happened before it. And even though I listened to Apex like a billion times.
Right. Once you kind of get an idea of what they're going for and the introduction of the characters, it was just like you kind of get addicted to it. You're like, oh man, like now I got to figure out what's going on over here. Who are these characters? Yeah, so on and so forth. What about you?
So I think for me, I think this is better than Apex, simply because I think that, like I said before, I think Apex was a gigantic, just massive step forward in terms of the songwriting element, but it was also not a particularly dynamic album. This one, every song on this album feels like it could be from a completely different band, to an extent. Because I thought that Apex was just like really, really well done, like, I don't know, Paul Di'Anno era Iron Maiden meets like Symphony X. But it definitely had its formula, and it definitely stuck to that formula, and it didn't deviate a whole lot. I kind of want to say that this one's better in just every conceivable regard. And yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying, that every single album is just a massive step forward. I haven't listened to anything earlier than Time Stand Still, but like, like I said, just that one to me was like a B- C+ album written and performed by A++ musicians. And then Apex was like a solid A, and then this one is just like A++. Like this is the first album where the actual music matches the level of musicianship involved, in my personal opinion. And
that's before you even start talking about the like production quality.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think Apex, I didn't have any problems with or I should say I didn't notice any problems with the production. Well, there's this one guy, like, do you follow the, what is it, the US Power Metal Connection Facebook group?
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's one guy who's complaining that the production on this album sounded like shit, and that it sounded like they recorded in a tin can, and like,
what album did you listen to?
Yeah, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, definitely, but I'm really curious how he arrived at that conclusion.
Uh, I agree. I feel like for me, you know, I had held on to Apex for so long as like my child. I'd listen to that every minute of the day if I could. But when this album came out, I do agree actually now with what you say. You know, I think that it has a lot of variety and it's very versatile. This new album of
Oh
this,
yeah, absolutely.
and I think they do it well. And to be able to create something like that while maintaining the spirit of the band, but also at the same time like maintaining I guess the direction of the music. It's really something that is like a new level.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, formulaic was one thing it definitely was not.
Yeah,
You kind of
like,
right when you think you know where it's going, it takes a complete left turn, but still is like discernible as like song structures, and we're not going into like thank you scientist territory.
Yeah. So what out of 10?
ooh.
12.
Huh?
Honestly.
I'm personally gonna say 9.5 simply because 10 out of 10 is something that has to me personally, it's something that an album 10 out of 10 is something that happens to an album in retrospect. Um, I don't feel like I feel like that's too strong of a judgment to make right when an album comes out. So I'm going to say 9.5 out of 10, and we'll see if we'll see if a year
You've
from now
intellectually one up to my emotional response for sure.
I have no emotions. I am an emotionless automaton.
Okay, so here's actually interesting. You know, I like this album more than Apex, but I would still rate Apex higher than I would this album. I would give it an 8 out of 10. And to me,
8 out of 10.
I think that's really awesome personally. Like, you know, I feel like something that has been I guess really important to me is the way I've listened to music all the time, you know, is not so much like this is probably the first album that I'm like, you know what, like I have to really take a look at what they're talking about and what they're going on. I feel like lyrics and for me, it's always been, you know, what are the other instruments doing? That's kind of how I judge an album. Because if the instrument alone can make me feel something, then I'm good to go. But you know, with Apex, it was something that it was without the lyrics. Even then, it was such emotional. I had like an emotional attachment to it. You know, Cleanse the Bloodlines will always be like, you know, probably one of the best songs. But
I think I know how you're going into that too. I can hear that mindset because like within the first 30 seconds of listening to Apex, I could tell that like, oh my God, this is something I like really have not experienced this way before. And of course, cue it on repeat for several months. And with Abyss, it didn't hook me that way, but it did hook me. It just had to be like enveloped in it a little bit more than just like, all right, here's some banging guitar riffs and like then the soaring vocals, and of course I'm hooked.
Yes,
it's a much slower burn than Abyss or Apex. It's going to be really hard to differentiate these two album titles.
Yeah. I was also really appreciative of I felt like this newer album was lighter in terms of I guess intent. You know, I felt like Apex was a bit more of a darker album in terms of like riffs and whatnot. But even then they were like, you know, they come out with this banging music and you're having fun with it, which is kind of a rarity for a lot of metal bands sometimes. You know, they can't seem to get themselves out of this dark ideology or something. You know what I mean? Like, we want to make heavy music and whatnot, but then Abyss comes out and tells you like, hey, like, we're about to rock your rock your socks off, you know.
Yeah.
We're gonna
forget Satan. We're talking about the immortal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even then, like, emotional connection to Apex still gives a 9 out of 10, but I think that in terms of their progression, I think Abyss might be their best, which is weird. I personally
agree.
love Apex, but I think that if I had to have an album that would champion this band, it would be Abyss.
I can agree. Closing remarks?
Oh man, I'm excited. I'm excited for what they have. I know it's gonna be some time because they gotta do all stuff. But I'm excited. I think that concept albums are their thing. I think that it's their right now it's their bread and butter. And I hope that they stick with it. I hope that they give us another story that we can listen to again and again.
Totally. I think a testament to just how great this album is at my work we have a Slack channel that's devoted specifically to talking about metal, and even when Apex was new, we talked a lot about UTA there, but right when this dropped, ever since it dropped, the conversation in that channel has been exclusively about Apex. So I've suggested renaming it from Metal Forever to UTA Fanboys, because that's what it has become. And I'm probably the biggest fanboy of the group.
Fuck yeah. So my closing remarks are going to be basically, if you are the type of person who requires metal to be completely straightforward and have nothing but guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, you're probably not going to like this album that much, although that is just a hypothesis since I haven't heard that criticism pretty much at all. So I could be wrong about that. But if you are one of those people who says that you've never been able to get into Unleash the Archers because they don't have catchy or memorable melodies, you're definitely going to want to check this out, because this album completely has eliminated that problem.
Yes.
So that's yeah.
I think I know that's kind of like last statement, but to bring up another point, hopefully that's okay.
That's not okay.
Oh my God, we're done. Just kidding.
No points.
I enjoyed very much where the guitars were in this particular album. I thought that there's a lot of people out there who get gripe when the guitars aren't the center, they're not the stars. And I'm sure a lot of guitar players' egos got hurt after listening to that and being like, what? Like, what's going on here? The guitars, just like in any instrument, they have their place in a composition. And I feel like their ability to figure out where that is, especially in this album, was extraordinary.
Well, I kind of feel like I only don't like it when guitars are decentered, when the guitars are also like just kind of like or like I don't know, like mid-career Sonata Arctica or like symphonic metal, when just the guitars are really low in the mix and they're also really boring. It kind of makes me feel like whoever wrote this music just doesn't really know how to write for guitar, or doesn't have a very isn't very imaginative when it comes to guitar. But when it's a presentation like this where like the guitars are not necessarily the focus of the music, but they're also playing really, really crazy, insane, badass riffs and doing like crazy solos, that I'm in complete agreement. I don't need them to be centered. I am totally happy with them being like just a part of a bigger whole or whatever.
I feel like they're in the perfect place myself, even though like maybe not as big of a focal point, but the actual music that's being played by them are like, I think it's some of the best work I've heard from them. And I've even started trying to learn the solo in Soulbound, and Ugh. I'm like plugging the track into Reaper and like turning it way down to like a quarter of the speed. I'm like, oh, that's all right. One day.
Well, I'll definitely plan on starting the process of learning some of these vocal parts for whenever somebody wants to put a karaoke version on.
Good luck, man.
Anyways,
Get your work cut out for you.
indeed. Anyways, I guess that wraps it up. I will talk to you all later. Oh, check out HYDERA, featuring our mutual drummer Robin. That's HYDERA on Facebook and YouTube and all the fucking streaming platforms.
It's like Hyderabad, India, but without the bad.
Huh?
It's Hyderabad, India, without the.
I have
the
no
bad.
idea what the fuck that means.
It's a big city in India.
Oh, okay. I think of it as a Hydra, like a Hydra, the monster with the heads, but with an additional vowel.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and peace out.
Happy to be here.